let's do a screen share. And which do we want here? No, we don't want that one. We want this one. And this one, we need to start at the beginning. Okay, and this is my little thing about stories, which I think is kind of essential when you read through this, because it's not.
Yeah.
If you can see at the bottom here, stories, except in rare cases, are not told to bring home a truth, whether a moral truth or philosophical stories. In other words, a story doesn't necessarily have a point or a moral.
Right.
This whole thing is a result of this idea that stories have a point or a moral, that they're basically illustrations of more abstract things, is something that came about, I think, with the Enlightenment and was brought home with the Victorians. So
was it? I didn't realize that, because so many.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. If you read through the old Bible commentaries, they're really big on, the point of the story is.
Yeah.
One of the things about the Enlightenment is they tossed over the whole allegory symbolism stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That was meat and potatoes for the medieval era and prior. And so they, you get stories, but they always, it's like, have you ever read through Candide?
Have I read what?
Have you ever read Candide?
Yes.
Well, that whole thing is just, what's the moral of the story is. But it's things like that. And what's interesting is that it's not until the Victorian era that you get pictures of the parables,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to show what the point of the story is.
Right.
So anyway, so this is my thing about stories, is that we tell stories about ourselves and others, so we can relate their experiences to our experiences.
Yep.
The use of Shakespeare in prison to kind of live in someone else's experience, so you can figure out what yours is. They express who we and other people are by showing emotions, ideas, desires, viewpoints. But it's an expression. It's not
it's not the point of the thing. It's
right.
Yeah.
Okay. And you'll get a lot of that in Samuel, and in some of the stuff in Kings. It's to understand ourselves and our world, to bring coherence, order, and meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And have you ever read?
Usual, wouldn't it?
What? Yeah. Have you ever read Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis?
If I did, it was a very long time ago.
It's the novel nobody reads. And it's probably his best novel. And it's specifically, it's about what story you have defines how you see the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's specifically religious stories.
Yeah.
And so the main character, it's a retelling of the Psyche and the Psyche myth,
Mm-hmm.
where the evil sister convinces her to look at her lover, but it's told from the point of view of the evil sister.
From the point of view of
the evil sister, who turns out she's basically an Enlightenment girl or woman, and she has a Greek tutor, and so he influences her a lot, and how she sees the religion of their town, and how she sees the world and whatnot. And over the novel, the story changes, and by the end, she has a different story. And it's also about what morality is about too. It's a fascinating book.
I'll have to find it.
Yeah, like I said, Till We
Not
Have
hard.
Faces. Lewis, it's like the novel nobody knows that Lewis wrote. But
No, I know the title, but I don't think I've read it.
yeah, it's set in some medieval village, and she has to, the woman, the sister has to take over as the ruler of the village. So, and whatever. So, and it's also to help us remember who we are as individuals and groups, and
Yeah.
as a group. Okay. You know, so you read through, you know, it's the reason why we go through 9/11, you know, and we redo the stories there. It's the reason why newspapers tell stories about survivors of disasters or reactions to X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
So if you take that and put it in the Bible, it's the thing about the Bible is it's about how it tells us about God's actions to help us relate God's actions in the past to our own experiences in the present.
Mm-hmm.
It's to express who God is. Oh, there's Kathy.
Yay, Kathy.
Yay, Kathy. Can you get they were having trouble with the internet at the church. So
Again?
the cable that connects it.
It's still a problem?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hey, Kath.
Hey, Kathy. Well, I just have to go to the Lutherans today.
Well, I don't know, and they may have fixed it by now because
I don't know. I haven't
Poor
heard.
Andy.
what's his name was on it. He was trying to redo the cable or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Andy's
Yeah.
been doing the
You
work.
got a new cable.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah. So anyway, so we were just going over this intro about stories, and because this is all about stories, and it's the second part that's important to us, and we just started on that. So in the Bible, stories tell us of God's actions to help us relate God's action to our own experiences. So we read about what God did then, and we say, well, what does that mean for me now? It expresses who God is and who we are by showing the emotions, desires, and viewpoints of God and us toward God. So it's both, and you'll see that people's reactions to God are very important in Kings. It also understands how God brings coherence, order, and meaning to ourselves and our world, and that is what Kings is about. It's there. One of the principal aims of Kings is to explain why the Israelites were exiled.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Okay. It talks about this king did evil in God's sight, and X, Y, and Z happened. And in the end, they explain, that's one of the main things about
is the cable back
Kings.
on?
It's Learn. It's Andel.
Yay.
Hey,
Hey.
I just asked Katie, Victoria, and the cable is back up.
Good. Thank you, Katie.
There's a line running, so you should be able to go to church today.
No,
Excellent.
I can go to church. What it means is I don't have to get dressed to go to church
Right, exactly. You don't
or
have to.
drive.
Right. No driving, no extra clothes. You're good.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Excellent. Okay, so the last thing that Bible stories try to do is to remember who we are as God's people, both as individuals and as a group, and what that means and what that requires. And, if you're going to read through Samuel, you will see that David loves God, and even though he does horrible things, he still, comes back. And if anything, David is he's not a goody two shoes by any means. If you're going to read through Samuel, okay. So the whole point of this is that stories, except in rare cases, are not told to bring home a truth, whether a moral truth or a philosophical truth. In other words, a story, especially in the Bible, doesn't necessarily have a point or a moral. In other words, this is how you should act. If you read the story of David, no, murder, adultery, mayhem, all the rest of it.
Yeah, he's fairly, but he played the liar.
Yeah. So I just want you, when you go into this, don't go into it thinking, what's the point of this story? Okay. Because it basically, there's a whole, it's all of a piece, number one. And number two, it's it's introducing you to characters and people, and you'll see that I'll have to give you notes so you can follow some of this, what's going on, especially these strange names. So you understand how the whole thing, how God works within this, and some of the stuff can get pretty nasty, as we'll see. So. Okay, so here we are with our friend. One of the things I'll be using are these Tissot illustrations, and just to let you know who he is. In the late 1800s, he went to Israel, or the Levant, or whatever you want to call it, and stayed there a few years, and drew scenes of the people and the places and whatnot, and then used all that knowledge to draw pictures or illustrations of a Bible. Unfortunately, he didn't do a whole lot with the Old Testament, but he did do a wonderful 3-volume set, which I have, and each volume is probably, 18 inches tall. And, at least 12 inches wide, and it's full page illustrations, and they're marvelous. And so when they appear, I'll be using his illustrations, because they're not totally accurate, but I think they're more accurate than some of the stuff you'll see. So here we are, 1 Kings. So if somebody wants to read that.
I'll do it. 1 Kings 1. King David was old and advanced in years, and although they covered him with clothes, he could not get warm. So his servant said to him, "Let a young virgin be sought for my lord the king, and let her wait on the king and be his attendant. Let her lie in your bosom, so that my lord the king may be warm." So they searched for a beautiful young woman throughout the territory of Israel, and found Abishag the Shunammite, and brought her to the king. The young woman was very beautiful. She became the king's attendant or caretaker and served him, but the king did not know her sexually.
Now, why would they mention that? Why do you think they'd mention that?
Well, she's still marriageable if she's a virgin.
Right. Yep. Mm-hmm. She and she's basically his caretaker, like, his nurse. She's basically his nurse, and but she's not a wife per se. Okay, and this becomes, and and it's not clear that they considered her a wife, but that she was an attendant. And this becomes important later on.
Mhm.
Okay. Because someone gets himself killed because of it. So, now, does somebody want to read this?
No, that's why I read the first one. I didn't want to deal with these names.
Yeah, no. And I don't do reading aloud. And I gotta tell you, when I was reading this, keeping all those names straight was all those A's. It's like, who, what, huh? Yeah.
Okay, so let me read this. So you get now Adonijah, son of Haggith, exalted himself, or was giving himself airs, saying, I will be king. He prepared for himself chariots and horsemen and 50 men to run before him. His father had never at any time reprimanded him by asking, why have you done thus and so? He was also a very handsome man, and he was born next after Absalom. He conferred with Joab, son of Zeruiah, and the priest Abiathar, and they supported Adonijah. But the priest Zadok and Benaniah, son of Jehoiada, and the prophet Nathan and Shammah and his companions, David's own warriors, did not side with Adonijah. Adonijah sacrificed sheep, let me get rid of all these, and fatted cattle by the son of Zoheleth, which is beside Enrogel. And he invited all his brothers, the king's son, and all the royal officials of Judah, but he did not invite the prophet Nathan, or Benaniah, or the warriors, or his brother Solomon. Okay, so that's, sorry. Let me get a coffee. Okay, so what we have here and is all these names. Okay, so you notice on the bottom there, I've got the cheat sheet. Okay. Adoniah is David's fourth son. Two of his older brothers died violently. One was Absalom, who fomented a rebellion against David and was killed by Joab. Okay. The other one was a guy named Ammon. And do you know the story of Tamar? Tamar was Adonijah's sister, and his half-brother Ammon. Tamar was a whole sister, same mother, to Adonijah. And his half-brother Ammon fell in love with her and decided that she was too luscious to pass up, so he raped her and then refused to marry her.
Who did that?
What?
Who did that?
Ammon, one of Adonijah's two older brothers.
Oh, okay.
So Adonijah bided his time and eventually killed Ammon for what he had done to his sister. So that took care of the two older brothers. One died in a rebellion, and the other one got killed. What?
Convenient when you're next in the line of succession.
Well, and then there was another one, and he apparently died young. He just kind of appears and then disappears. So he is the next in line under Middle East, kind of general Middle East ideas of succession. He's next in line. So he decides, his dad's old. He's going to get up there and do all this stuff. Okay, so who are these other people? Joab and Abiathar were with David from the very beginning. Joab was the commander of David's army. Abiathar is a high priest, but he's also a descendant of Eli. And Eli was the priest at the time, but he had these sons who were he did not rein in. And because he didn't, God got angry at him and told him that, his line was going to end. So I think Eli was Abiathar's grandfather or something like that. Zadok was also a high priest with Abiathar. And then he becomes sole high priest. Benaiah is the commander of David's bodyguards, which have this complicated name, which we'll come across in a bit. But basically, they're hired mercenaries from Philistia and Crete. Now, Philistia is along the coastline. They're Philistines, basically, and they're along the coastline. And one of the reasons why he has these mercenaries as his bodyguard is that they're basically not loyal to anyone except David. Okay. And then you have Nathan, who's David's prophet. Okay. Now, Nathan's also the one who sussed out David's adultery with Bathsheba. Remember, he tells that little story about, this powerful man took this little lamb from this poor farmer. And David says, well, we should do something about that. And Nathan says, well, you're the rich farmer taking the poor lamb from the poor farmer and whatnot. So David's the one that calls out his adultery. But as you remember, David also makes Bathsheba an honest woman, and her next child is Solomon. Okay, so now this whole thing about he prepared for himself chariots and horsemen and 50 men to run before him. Now, the institution of the monarchy is very new in Israel, so they just kind of borrow things from other places. And this whole idea of chariots and horses is borrowed from other places. And we have, this is what the chariots look like. And a chariot was a prestige item. You had to have iron banding around the wheels, and sometimes these were bronze, and et cetera, et cetera. So this is a royal chariot from Mesopotamia, which is east of Israel along the Euphrates. And this is from the 8th century. So you can see things don't change a whole lot. And remember that we're dealing with, so this is from the 700s. And BCE, and we're dealing with 1000 BCE. So this is like, it's something that goes over the centuries. Okay, things don't change a whole lot. And you can see here, this is 14th centuries, this is 1300s, this is Egypt, here's the chariots, and here's the runners in front. We'll come across this running in front. Again, I don't know what the point of people running in front of you is, but that's what it was. So all these folks get together for a feast, and I thought this was kind of an interesting picture. This was a feast prepared for a Pan-Hellenic conference in 1931. And this is from a collection of photographs, and we'll be looking at these photographs that were taken by some Americans between 1900 and 1940. And they're all in black and white, and they're all reside at the Library of Congress. So you can go to the Library of Congress and download this stuff. But you can see this feast, all the plates are down here in the middle, and they have glasses, and you take bread and you dip this stuff in, you dip your bread in the food and whatnot. And I have no idea what these fruits are, but so I just thought you'd like to know what that kind of stuff is like. Okay. Now, something you have to know. This is what David's Jerusalem will look like. Okay. This is the Temple Mount, and there's not a temple there, there's a tent. Okay, is up on top of the hill here. This is what's called the Ophel, and I believe somewhere in here is where David's palace was. Okay, and then here's the actual city down here. Okay, now I'll go over this again, but there's two springs near the city. One is this Gihon spring here, like right outside the city, and then there's this En-Rogel spring down here. En-Rogel is a spring. Okay, so that's where he is with his feast and everything. And you can see that there's like 3 valleys, or there's 4 valleys. This is the Kidron Valley, which is opposite, which divides the city from Mount of Olives. This is the Hinnom Valley, which goes around the south end. And this is the Tropoian Valley, which goes up here. A lot of this has been filled in. And then the Transvaal Valley. Okay, so when Jerusalem spreads out, it spreads out this way. And that's one of the reasons why this is partly filled in. Okay. Okay, so Gihon Spring and En-Rogel. Okay, and this gives you an idea. This is Jerusalem around 1900. So here's David's city right here. You can see the spring, Gihon Valley, the Gihon Spring is right down here at the base of the hill. Here's the Mount of Olives. The Kidron Valley runs up here, and the Hinnom Valley runs over here, and En-Rogel is over here. Now, one of the reasons why you can have all these springs is all this is limestone. So the water's coming down and coming out at these springs. So this is where Adonijah is having his feast. It's down here. Okay. So this is En-Rogel is this broken down building here. And the serpent stone, they have no idea. The Zoolith, that they have no idea what that stone was, but it's somewhere around here, and that's all they know. And so this is what it looked like around 1900. Okay, so this is the Kidron Valley up here. And it's kind of right at the corner of the Kidron and the other valley there. And this is what it looks like today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this is David's Jerusalem here, and this is En-Rogel here, and here's the Kidron Valley going up here. And now, when it says Benjamin and Judah, this was the dividing line between the 2 tribes. That's all that is. Okay, so now why is all that important? So Bathsheba, you know, right? Solomon's mother. So somebody want to read this? How about you, Wayne? Okay.
Then Nathan said to Bathsheba, Solomon's mother, have you not heard that Adonijah, son of Haggith,
Haggith.
has become king, and our Lord David does not know it. Now therefore, come, let me give you advice so that you may save your own life and the life of your son Solomon. Go in at once to King David and say to him, do you not, my lord king, swear to your servant, saying, your son Solomon shall succeed me as king, and he shall sit on my throne? Why then is Adonijah king?
Adonijah is,
Adonijah king. Then while you are still there speaking with the king, I will come in after you and confirm your words.
okay, so you can see there's a little bit of machinations going on here.
Yeah.
And you notice this thing about your son Solomon shall succeed me as king, and he shall sit on my throne.
Mhm.
Now, it's not, there's no mention of this, that David ever promised her this. This is the first mention of it. It's not anywhere in Samuel. This is like the first mention.
So how
Okay.
much credence can we put into that?
Well, that's the problem. They're
Okay.
wondering if they're kind of David's an old man now, and maybe his memory's a bit foggy, and he might have a touch of dementia, and they might be playing the guy is what comes out of this, okay? But because Nathan is doing this, it somehow has has God's kind of stamp of approval, though he never has a vision or a word of the Lord thing about it. So, does somebody want to read the next section? Or I'll read it. So Bathsheba went to the king in his room. The king was very old, and Abishag the Shunammite was attending the king. Bathsheba bowed low and did obeisance to the king, and the king said, "What do you wish?" She said to him, "My lord, you swore to your servant by the Lord your God, saying, your son Solomon shall succeed me as king, and he shall sit on my throne. But now suddenly Adonijah has become king, though you, my lord the king, do not know it. He has sacrificed oxen, fatted cattle, and sheep in abundance, and has invited all the children of the king, the priest Abiathar, and Joab, the commander of the army. But your servant Solomon he has not invited. But you, my lord the king, the eyes of all Israel are on you to tell them who shall sit on the throne of my lord the king after him. Otherwise it will come to pass, when my lord the king sleeps with his ancestors, that my son Solomon and I will be counted offenders." That's putting it nicely. So you can see what's going on here is that Nathan's trying to protect her and Solomon.
Mhm.
And to do this, he has to make Solomon king. So he comes up with this. And notice your son Solomon shall succeed me as king. Your son Solomon shall succeed me as king and sit on my throne. Notice it's the same in both. Okay. And notice that Nathan mentions who's with Adonijah, and so that he understands, the political machinations. Okay. Any questions about all that? Or anything so far? No? Okay.
Well, it sounds like fairly normal political proceedings. The one in power sort of cleans house.
Yeah, exactly. And as we'll see, they do like to clean house. So, so while she's speaking with the king, the prophet Nathan came in. Now, you'll see there's some kind of disconnect here, and we'll talk about the disconnect. The king was told, here is the prophet Nathan. When he came in before the king, he did obeisance to the king with his face to the ground. And Nathan said, my lord the king, have you said Adonijah shall succeed me as king, and he shall sit on my throne? For today he has gone down and has sacrificed oxen, fatted cattle, and sheep in abundance, and has invited all the king's children, Joab, the commander of the army, and the priest Abiathar, who are now eating and drinking before him and saying, long live King Adonijah. But he did not invite me, your servant, and the priest Zadok, and Benaniah, son of Jehoiada, and your servant Solomon. Has this thing been brought about by my lord the king, and you have not let your servants know who shall sit on the throne of my lord the king after him? So notice that from Bathsheba's saying, she just goes into the fatted calf and the sheep in abundance and invited all the children and but not Solomon. And he ups it by saying these people are now drinking and eating before him and saying, long live King Adonijah. Okay. And he didn't invite me. So he lists all the people who are in political positions, high political positions, who are not invited. Okay, so we now have Nathan has made it very clear who's with them and who's against them. Okay. So King David answers him, summon Bathsheba to me. And so she came into the king's presence and stood before the king. And the king swore, saying, as the Lord lives, you who has saved my life from every adversity, and as I swore to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, your son Solomon shall succeed me as king, and he shall sit on my throne in my place. So will I do this day. Then Bathsheba bowed her face to the ground and did obeisance to the king and said, may my lord King David live forever. That's slathering it on thick. But now notice that Bathsheba was there, but now she isn't, and now she's back. And there's two things you can put into this. One is we've got two different tellings being kind of interweaved. But the other thing is that apparently one of the thing about Bible stories is that only two people talk at the time. So there's not three people in the room. One's always out, and you have to bring them back in. So, but notice the different way that David phrases this. Okay. In this one, it's, and he shall sit on my throne, and on this one, in my place. So David's up the ante on this because he's saying that he's basically making Solomon his regent because he's a sick old man. So not only is Solomon going to be king after David dies, but also while David's alive.
But hadn't David promised that to Bathsheba previously?
This is the first mention of that promise.
Okay.
Okay, so it's not clear whether David ever promised that to Bathsheba.
Whether she just played him.
Well, it's Nathan who's doing the playing. He sends Bathsheba in, and she agrees to it. She's not. I mean, there's two ways you can see her. You can see her as a patsy, okay, and she's just doing this to save her son, or you can see her as a very wily woman.
So when she went to David,
Yeah.
and when Nathan said to her to go to David,
Mhm.
when she said, remember you said this, she was just repeating what Nathan had told her to say.
Yeah,
Then
but
there's a distinct
also,
possibility it was never said.
yes, there's a distinct possibility that was
Oh,
never
okay.
promised.
Okay.
Okay, this is again, all these palace machinations, okay? They get worse.
Great.
Okay, but notice my tendency is to see Bathsheba not as a patsy for Nathan, but as someone who's wily in her own ways, because notice that Nathan just tells her to go in and say, didn't you promise me X? But she says yes, but then she adds all this, and now suddenly Adonijah's king and has sacrificed oxen, fatted calf in abundance, and has invited all the children of the king except us. Okay. But not your son Solomon. So she's pointing out specifically Solomon's not part of this. And therefore, as Nathan says, Solomon's in danger
Oh, okay.
because you kill off all the rivals.
Yeah, I read that as it's a play for her life and Solomon's life as much as anything else.
Yes.
I took
yes,
it as she was standing up for her, making sure her son got his due.
yes. It's also that. But notice how she, she's trying to make sure. And so, says all the things that Adonijah's done. And when Nathan comes in, he makes sure that David knows not only was Solomon not invited, but me and Zadok and Benaniah and
All your good people.
have not been invited. So now
Your
he
team
says,
was not invited.
yes, the rest, this part of the team was not invited. So when David answers her, he ups the ante by saying, not only will David succeed me as king, but he will sit on the throne in my place, meaning while I'm alive.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So what does all that mean? Let's see, we're here.
Does that give him decision-making power, or is he just holding David's place?
I would say that it gives him decision-making power. Okay. So David says, summon me the priest Zadok, the prophet Nathan, and Benaniah, son of Jehoiada. Okay, now notice he's saying summon Nathan. Okay, remember that Nathan was here and they had to summon Bathsheba. There's no three-way dialogues here. Okay, apparently in the Bible, there are no three-way dialogues. There's only person to person. Okay. And so they have to summon Nathan back in. And when they came before the king said to them, take with you the servants of your Lord and have my son Solomon ride my own mule and bring him down to Gihon, that spring. There let the priest Zadok and the prophet Nathan anoint him king over Israel. Then blow the trumpet and say, long live King Solomon. And you shall go up following him, let him enter and sit on my throne, and he shall be king in my place, for I have appointed him to be ruler over Israel and over Judah. Okay, so I guess he does have decision-making power. And Benaniah, son of Jehoiada, answered the king, Amen. May the Lord, the God of my Lord the king, so ordain. And as the Lord has been with my Lord the king, so may he be with Solomon and make his throne greater than the throne of my Lord King David. Okay. Now, apparently they did not ride horses. Horses were for pulling chariots. They rode donkeys or mules. Now, donkeys are a little bit smaller than mules. Mules are a cross between donkeys and horses. So people would ride donkeys or mules. So that's why Solomon is riding David's own mule, which, you know, if Solomon's riding David's mule, obviously he's David, right? And so they're going to anoint him and make him king. So the priest Zadok, the prophet Nathan, Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, and the Cherethites and the Pelethites, those are the folks from Crete and Philistia, the Philistines.
Mhm.
Those are the ones in the bodyguard. Okay, so this is basically David's bodyguard. Went down and had Solomon ride on King David's mule and led him to the Gihon spring. There, the priest Zadok took the horn of oil from the tent. That's the tent of meeting, which is on top of the hill, and anointed Solomon. Then they blew the trumpet, and all the people said, "Long live King Solomon!" And all the people went up following him, playing on pipes and rejoicing with great joy, so that the earth quaked with their noise. Okay.
Mhm.
So this is a modern rendering of the anointing of Solomon. This is Zadok. This would be Nathan. Here's Solomon here. And here they are blowing on the horn. This is what the horn looks like here. It's basically a ram's horn.
Mhm.
Okay. And this is kind of an interesting piece. It's from the Church of the Savior in Moscow. And the Church of the Savior was torn down by Stalin because he was real big in tearing down churches. And when Putin came into power and aligned himself with the church, they rebuilt it. So this was done within the last 20 years or so. Just thought you'd like to know.
That's his own one and only redeeming quality, that he rebuilt a church.
Well, no, actually, what people don't know is Putin was secretly baptized by his grandmother.
Oh.
And so he's been baptized all his life. And he is very much aligned with the church. Now, whether this is political machinations or reality, I don't know, but I do know that he goes to church services. And I know on one occasion, at least, he took a helicopter to go visit a famous icon that had just been reinstalled in a church in the middle of nowhere. So, so he does support building churches. He does support the Patriarch of Moscow, and the Patriarch supports him because there's this idea in the Orthodox Church that government and church should work hand in glove. But who's the glove and who's the hand? In this case, I think Putin's the hand and the Patriarch is the glove. But anyway, so we're getting to the exciting conclusion here. So Adonijah and all the guests who were with him heard the trumpet as they finished feasting. And when Joab heard the sound of the trumpet, he said, "Why is the city in an uproar?" And while he was speaking, Jonathan, the son of the priest Abiathar, arrived. And Adonijah asked, "Come in, for you are a worthy man, and surely you will bring us good news." And Jonathan answered Adonijah, "No, for our Lord King David has made Solomon king, and the king has sent with him the priest Zadok, the prophet Nathan, and Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, and the Cherethites and the Pelethites, and they had him ride on the king's mule. And the priest Zadok and the prophet Nathan has anointed him king at Gihon, and they have gone up from there rejoicing, so that the city is in an uproar. And this is the noise you heard. Solomon now sits on the royal throne. Moreover, the king's servants came to congratulate our Lord David, saying, May God make the name of Solomon more famous than yours, and make his throne greater than your throne." And the king bowed in worship on the bed and went on to pray thus: "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who today has granted one of my offspring to sit on my throne and permitted me to witness it. Now, he's an old man stuck in bed, but, you know.
Yeah.
Now, notice that Jonathan's kind of speech here is very much of a speech, you know, it's like rhetoric, you know. And he mentions everything, and he mentions the Gihon spring, and they're going up and rejoicing, and he sits on the throne, da-da-da-da-da. And this kind of drives home to Adonijah that, oops, he overstepped himself. So just to give you an idea, again, this is the Kidron Valley up here. This is the Gihon Spring where Solomon and his crew are. And this is En Rogel, which is Adonijah and his crew. So it's not very far. It's probably half a mile or something. And this is David's palace up in here. So so you can see that it's not very far, and they could actually hear it. Okay. So then all the guests of Adonijah got up trembling and went their own ways. And Adonijah, fearing Solomon, got up and went to grasp the horns of the altar. Solomon was informed, Adonijah is afraid of King Solomon. See, he has laid hold of the horns of the altar, saying, let King Solomon swear to me first that he will not kill his servant with the sword. So Solomon responded, if he proves to be a worthy man, not one of his hairs shall fall to the ground, but if wickedness is found in him, he shall die. Then King Solomon sent to have him brought down from the altar, and he came to do obeisance to King Solomon. And Solomon said to him, go home. So this is a representation of what was on top of the hill. This is the tent, and you know there was this thing surrounding it. Though this is a life-size model of what was in the desert, but this gives you an idea. And you can see the horns of the altar here. This is I label it a non-kosher four-horned altar. The reason why it's non-kosher is that it's made of hewn stone, and altars have to be made of unhewn stone.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh,
So, but this one's from
why is that?
This is what?
Why is that?
I don't know. That's just the rules of the
More
game.
pure maybe or something like that?
I don't know. But this one's from Beersheba, and notice it's from the 700s. So it's after all those rules were laid down. Okay. But notice the horns. I don't know what the significance of it is, but horns of the altar. So it's curved like a ram's horn, and apparently it's kind of a symbol of strength, I guess. So, and just to give you an idea of what it looks like, here's somebody grabbing the horns of an altar. You can see this is actually rather large. That's the other thing. This is the replica in Beersheba. So this altar here is this one here.
Oh.
But again, it's hewn stone. So, and it's 9:30, folks.
Okay.
So we've gotten through the first chapter. And for next week. And next week we get David's speech. And he has Solomon, you know, do things for people or at people. And the reasoning behind what David asks Solomon to do, you have to read all this. Okay, so you can either read each one of these sections, or you can read 2 Samuel 3-6 through 39 about the story of Abner and Joab. Or you can read about Absalom's rebellion and all its ramifications in these 4 chapters here, or 5 chapters. People have long memories, and like I did last week, I will send this out to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm assuming you're going to read all this stuff because I don't want to read through it next week. There's other things going on in that speech besides who gets killed by whom. Okay.
Yep, thank
Mhm.
you.
You're welcome.
Thank
And
you.
I will see you folks next week. Okay.
Super.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Good
Appreciate
week,
you being
all.
here. What?
Have a good week, all.
Yep.
Yeah.
You folks too. Okay. Bye.
Bye.